First tonight to Gaza, where Israel has begun attacking the southern city of Rafah. More than 1.5 million displaced Palestinians are sheltering there. A number of airstrikes took place in the east of the city earlier, neighborhoods where evacuation orders had been issued. In text messages, calls and leaflets, Israel has asked residents to leave. People were told to move to the Al-Mawasi camp around 20 kilometers away, which aid agencies say is already crowded with displaced people. Palestinians carrying what's left of their belongings could be seen fleeing from Rafah. The IDF has said its operation there is of limited scope. Hamas has described the move as a dangerous escalation.
The people are all dead. What do they want from us? What do they want from us? God is our suffice, and the best disposer of our affairs. May God take revenge from them. They killed our children, slaughtered our children. Who was killed amongst them? Israelis? They killed all of us. They cut us into pieces. My nephew was found in pieces, with no head or legs. Shame on them. These people have had enough. Where should they go? They were calling us during the entire night. They did not let us sleep all night as they kept calling us on our phones. We did not want to answer them. What do they want? For us to evacuate our homes.
We fled death and destruction, and we came to Rafah only to find destruction here. Do they want to kill us here? We came seeking safety in Rafah. Where do they want to send us? Where are we to go? The situation is so difficult, we're unable to describe the destruction that we are living in here. Someone feel for us and the tragedy we are living through. Last night the situation was very difficult. We woke to the sound of the bombing and the rubble which reached the tents of the displaced. The night was, even our children and our girls were screaming from fright. We are displaced in tents. They should secure the displaced before they hit. You're hitting a building that's in between tents. This is a really difficult situation, honestly. The shrapnel reached our tents. It's a horrifying situation, and we woke up to pamphlets saying we have to leave Rafah. Leave Rafah? Where are we to go? Secure a place for us to go to. These displaced, 1,200 displaced, 1,200,000 displaced. Where are they to go? It's such a difficult situation, honestly, we can't anymore. Someone stand with us and help us.
Sounds absolutely desperate, doesn't it? To make matters worse, a number of Palestinians have so far been killed in Rafah, including a 6-month-old baby who knew nothing but war in his short life. Hani Questa was born in October, a month prematurely following a strike on his family home which killed his father and other relatives. His mother, who was critically injured, later died. The baby was being taken care of by relatives, and several of them died alongside him. Almost 35,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, have now been killed in Israel's war on Gaza.
He was a baby. He was 6 months old. They hit Al Sultan, where his parents were killed, and he survived, and now he was hit the second time. This is the second time. This has destroyed the whole family. There is no one left.
What has he done to deserve this? He still has not seen anything in the world. He does not know Jews, Israelis, or Arabs. He does not know anything. He doesn't understand the difference between Jews, Israelis, or Arabs.
Well, news broadcaster Al Jazeera is vowing that its coverage of the war in Gaza will continue after Israel shut down its operations in the country. Officials raided the network's offices in occupied East Jerusalem, seizing equipment. The channel was also taken off air in Israel, and Al Jazeera's website has been blocked. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described Al Jazeera as an incitement channel and a threat to national security. It's a move that's been denounced by the United Nations, Israeli civil rights groups and international journalism organizations. Al Jazeera says it'll take legal action against the Israeli government.
We strongly condemn and denounce this criminal act that violates human rights and the basic right to access of information. Al Jazeera affirms its right to continue to provide news and information to its global audiences. Israel's direct targeting and killing of journalists, arrests, intimidation, and the threats will not deter Al Jazeera from its commitment to cover, whilst more than 140 Palestinian journalists have been killed since the beginning of the war on Gaza. The network vehemently rejects the allegations presented by Israeli authorities, suggesting professional media standards have been violated.
This is very dangerous decision against Al Jazeera and against the international media at all, because at least it's clear that they want to prevent from any others to know what is happening in this war in Gaza, inside Israel, in the West Bank. Background of this decision is not professional or journalistic things, it's political things, because at least Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right government that he is leading in Israel, they're looking all the time how to have benefits for their base, elected base. This decision is very dangerous one. Israel cannot claim all the time that she is a democracy, that it's democracy, and at the same time they are cutting and prevent the journalists to do their job, their professional duty to deliver all the information and the facts and the truth to the people. And at the same time, this is dangerous because this is inciting the extremists in Israel and the settlers to start attacking journalists, especially from Al Jazeera.
Well, for more on what's happening in and around Gaza, I'm joined now in the studio by Arise international correspondent Faith Orr. Good to see you, Faith. And we're just hearing literally a few minutes ago of developments around that deal between Israel and Gaza. Ceasefire deal.
We are. Hamas have now spoken to the mediators from Egypt and from Qatar, and they have accepted the ceasefire proposal that is on the table. Now, I have to tell you, the scenes that we're getting coming out of Gaza at the moment, we haven't been able to get the pictures for our viewers just yet, but we are working on it. The streets are full of people celebrating, chanting, cheering. People are so desperate for this war to end. They want to go back and see their loved ones. People are already on the move. I mean, I can't even explain to you what it's like. People are on people's shoulders, they're jumping around. I mean, it really is ecstatic scenes in Rafah and also in where Al-Aqsa Hospital is there in Deir al-Balah in Gaza. But it's premature because Israel also needs to accept this deal. So we haven't heard from the Israeli side yet. What we have heard from the Israelis is that an end to the war is off the table, that they will not fully withdraw from Gaza. So we haven't heard a reaction to what Hamas have said, but in fact, we're just getting some reaction now. An Israeli official has indicated that the ceasefire proposal will be rejected. It's an unnamed official speaking anonymously to the Reuters news agency, who says that it's a softened proposal and it's not acceptable to Israel. There are far-reaching conclusions within the proposal that Israel will not support. So celebrations in Gaza, but it sounds like Israel is carrying on with this war.
It's a bit confusing, though, because, I mean, we did hear a few days ago Israel giving a deadline of a week for Hamas to accept that proposed deal. I mean, it doesn't sound as though that is going to stay the hand of the Israelis.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has a lot to do with this. He has been very vocal in the past few days, adamant that he will not end the war, that the troops will not withdraw. The opposition leader, Yair Lapid, has criticised him for that and said that he needs to stop this rhetoric. Him and the rest of the war cabinet ministers, they need to back down on this in order to get the captives back. He says he's been very irresponsible. Benjamin Netanyahu is doing this for political gain. The other members of the war cabinet have threatened to kick him out of government, which would be quite easy to do in Israel. I mean, they have elections the way that some people have hot dinners. It's a pretty unstable government when it's not at war. he is risking, if he agrees to these deals, he is risking losing his job.
And just based on the presumption then that this Israeli attack on Rafah is going to go ahead, what are you picking up in terms of the possible scale of that Israeli operation?
Unimaginable. 100,000 people have already been told to move from eastern Rafah. They have been told to go to the Al-Mawasi camp. Now that is a camp that is already completely overburdened. I mean, it was just wasteland before the war. There was nothing really there. So people are making tents, and I mean, when I say tents, I'm not talking about something you go to a sports store and buy. It is tarpaulins held up with bits of wood. I mean, it is not, you know, by no means what anyone should be living in. So that is where people are being sent. But as I say, this is already overcrowded. There are no facilities there. There's no hygiene, running water, electricity. It is coming into summer. So if they put more and more people into Al-Mawasi, it's going to become unbearable in Al-Mawasi. And then let's not forget, Rafah was supposed to be the safe space. As a city as a whole, Israel is already striking there. There is very little to suggest that they wouldn't continue the attacks into Al-Mawasi and follow the population there.
And almost predictably, lots of reactions from the international community. We've heard from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, the European Union, and I understand the Americans. President Biden has also spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu and reiterated his warning that an invasion of Rafah must not happen.
Indeed. I mean, this is something that Biden has been saying over and over again to Netanyahu. We have seen airstrikes today because we've seen these evacuation orders. It appears that Netanyahu is simply not listening to him. We also heard from the EU's top diplomat, as you mentioned there, Josep Borrell. He says this evacuation is unacceptable and that Israel must implement the UN resolution which demanded a ceasefire. He's saying the EU and the international community can and must stop Israel in its tracks from carrying out this assault. We also heard from Emmanuel Macron just a little bit before today, a few days ago. He described the forced evacuation of Rafah as a war crime. From Hamas's part, they're also not taking this lying down. They are saying that an invasion of Rafah will not be a picnic for the Israeli army, and they are willing to defend the Palestinian population there. Interestingly today as well, it's not just Hamas that are fighting back. We've seen the Al-Quds brigades, which is the armed wing of the Islamic Jihad. They have been snipering Israeli soldiers. We believe at least one has been killed. They've also been firing mortar rounds at soldiers and at vehicles. And we also saw the Palestinian armed group Mujahideen Brigades saying its fighters destroyed a military site in central Gaza with short-range rockets. So whereas before the war, these groups would not have worked together, this has brought them together. They are working together. Israel is facing more than one enemy here.
And we've heard from relatives of the hostages, Israeli hostages, who are worried about this offensive on Rafah and the risk it'll pose to those hostages. I wonder what you're hearing about whether there is much support in Israel for this anticipated offensive on Rafah, or is there increasing disquiet about it?
There is a lot of disquiet. I mean, Israel is split as a society on this war. There are people who will support it and will support the offensive regardless of the cost, and there are the people who say, well, wait a second, our relatives, our loved ones, the captives are still in there. We saw before when Israel launched assaults, captives were among those who were killed. Even 2 men or 3 men, I think it was, who were waving white flags. The Israeli soldiers shot them. So when the Israeli troops launch an assault, the captives are by no means spared from that. We know that some of them are, we suspect some of them are being held in Rafah underground. The problem with the assault on Rafah is what will it achieve? A lot of the families say, well, it's not going to get our relatives back. It's not going to stop Hamas, and it is just going to entrench a civilian population there further who perhaps didn't back Hamas before, but probably do now.
Faith, thank you very much indeed. Faith Orr is Arise International correspondent.